Mr. Johnson, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Secretary Wormuth, and General McConville. Thank you both for being here today. And thank you, General, for your commitment to maintaining peace through strength. I appreciate how you articulated that a few moments ago. Last week, I asked Secretary Austin and General Milley, who are here, about Army readiness. And General Milley had what I thought was a memorable quote. He said, "Wars are often started from afar, from long-range weapons systems. They're always ended, however, somewhere on the ground, and the last bullet of a war is usually fired by a Marine or Army infantryman. So it's critical to maintain the readiness of the United States Army." Our training centers, both at Fort Irwin and Fort Polk, as well as in Germany, are going to be critically important moving forward to maintain our current ground force capabilities. I represent Fort Polk, it's in my district, proudly. How would you say the President's budget request for the Army accounts for those considerations, namely Army readiness and getting rotations through our training centers? I know you were addressing that briefly with Congressman Green a few moments ago. Maybe I go to the Secretary first.
Sure, Congressman. First of all, readiness is incredibly important. It's one of our, I sort of think of the overall Army program as a three-legged stool. You have modernization, you have readiness, and you have, force structure. So we have, as the chief said, we have funded 20 rotations, CTC rotations, in our budget because the Army has worked very hard in the last several years to dig itself out of a readiness trough that was, substantially a result of sequestration and the Budget Control Act. And maintaining that readiness to be able to fight tonight is very important. So we've tried to emphasize that and don't feel that there's really any headspace in that area, if you will. I don't know, General McConville, if you want to add to that.
I think our combat training centers are really the gold standard of how we train battalion and brigade units, and so they're absolutely critical for what we're trying to do. What we're with the budget, and again, as we take a look at how much, we're trying to most efficiently use the resources we have. So if you take a look at the 20 rotations, accordingly, we're doing 8 out at the Combat Training Center at NTC. That's kind of armor, large-scale type ground combat operations, and most of the units are fairly close to that, and so they're able to do that. For the Joint Readiness Training Center, we're doing a couple things. One is we're going to move them actually maybe to Alaska, the cadre, to run a CTC-like rotation in Alaska under the conditions, because if you're going to be an Arctic warrior, it might be better to be trained in that environment, and the same thing out in the jungle. So we're taking a look at that, and the same thing for units going to Europe. To cut down the op tempo, we have a CTC there, so what we'd like to do is run them through a combat training center as part of their deployment, rather than having them get to a deployment and taking a look at the op tempo. So that we're trying to balance everything within resources, and one of the resources is time. So how do we best use their time? And if we have to bring a unit's equipment all the way from Hawaii, put it on a boat, and by the time it gets to Fort Polk, and then put it on a boat and send it back, they're away from their equipment for a couple months. So we're trying to figure out the best way to do this within the resources that we have.
Just a parenthetical note that Fort Polk can mimic the conditions of anywhere except the Arctic. So
I know, that's right. I've spent some good quality time.
Yes, sir, I'm sure you have. The new Global Defender exercise is funded in the budget request and described by the Army as additive and designed to showcase Army modernization priorities and, quote, key Department of Defense and congressional audiences, unquote. Yet, the large-scale theater-level Defender Europe exercise that was previously scheduled for FY 2022 is not funded in the budget request. First of all, what are the goals of the Global Defender exercise, and what does the Army mean by that in terms of the audiences who it's focused for?
Given how new I am, why don't I let the chief talk about that one?
Yeah, well, Defenders have been really running across three kind of scenarios. One is certainly Defender Europe, which was large amount of forces going, that was impacted by COVID, but we still were able to accomplish a lot of goals, and those will continue. But the focal point was that. The same thing with 21 Indo-Pacific. That was a major exercise. The intent of this exercise is just to take a look at, as we look at the future, what's the global impact of being contested all the way from home to one of the theaters we're going to have to go to. So, we see the change in environment. We're seeing little effects of that, from cyber and some other things that, people can basically impact the United States in ways that we've never seen before. And so we need to be aware of that. We need to be able to mobilize our forces. We need to be able to get them through the various centers, and we need to make sure the infrastructure is going to support us deploying in a contested environment.
Thank you both. I'm out of time. I yield back.